Well, let's stick on school kids and get into this single-sex school debate. It's raised its head in Sydney lately because of a couple of big boys' schools going co-ed and controversy around that. I know the same's happened in Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane. This is a debate raging around the country. And I think Janet Albrechtsen's really hit the nail on the head with this in a couple of articles, Tanveer. She says it's really about attacking masculinity. Girls' schools can remain girls' schools. It's all the boys' schools that have to let girls in to address the toxic masculinity, apparently. Is that a fair point?
And it's happening only at a very upper middle class level. So that's where it's elite feminism. And I think the term toxic masculinity is often just a synonym for masculinity. And I think Janet's key things. But what I've liked about this debate, I think the headmasters of private boys' schools are actually fantastic advocates for this cause. Because they have a bunch of, essentially innocent kids who've done absolutely nothing wrong, suddenly painted in this perception that they're kind of this version of evil that needs to be civilised. So look, Janet's point is an important one, and obviously this is at a deeper level of progressivism. It's closely tied to sort of elite feminism, and an idea of that is what's seen as the primitive edge of man, which is essentially ordinary masculinity often, must be civilised, must be kind of... That's where Trump was so powerful, because he was just this kind of image of the primitive thing.
Chest beating.
So every time we hear toxic masculinity, we should be just replacing that with masculinity. And that's essentially their aim.
I read Janet's piece saying it's always boys' schools that have to take girls, and that resonated. But then I just remembered, while sitting on this desk, there was a school in Adelaide, Mercedes. That was always a girls' school, and they brought in boys. It's been a very successful co-ed school. But it is the trend. And Claire, is it the case, though, that students often perform better, either boys or girls, if they're in single-sex schools?
Yeah, some research has shown that, academically speaking, or a lot of research actually has shown that boys will perform better academically speaking when girls are in the classroom, and that girls will perform better academically, usually, when boys are not in the classroom. and so then, I mean, even that concept feeds into kind of this awful males, I mean, they need to be around females issue. But that doesn't account for things like their emotional well-being and their mental health, and the fact that boys actually I think need to be around other boys, and we need to promote what is healthy masculinity, and that there is such a thing, and that we need masculinity. In itself, it's not a bad thing. It's a foil to femininity. It's a very natural thing. And Janet's article was excellent, and I think it really made the point that we don't celebrate good men, you know, white, middle-class, older men.
Do they exist?
They do exist.
No, of course they do.
They're out there. And what happens is they just get dragged down and put this broad brushstroke as, you know, toxic masculinity, these poor guys. And imagine if you did that to women. Imagine if you had the term toxic femininity. And women would be up in outrage about it, saying, you can't just label us all that. I mean, it's the same thing. No other minority group, no one else would be characterised in such a broad manner.
Yeah, a very, very good point. I just want to go on to a study here that's kind of linked to this, I suppose, in some ways. We're talking a lot about school children and teenagers tonight. And that is this survey that's showing a quarter of teenagers cited mental health as their biggest challenge. Now, you two deal in this every day, but I get a sense that, you know, we talk about this so much. No wonder it comes up. People are hearing about it all the time. Now, there's an advantage to that, presumably, because people are aware they can get help or where they should seek help. But is there a downside? Are people sort of seeing more in normal life pressures than they should?
Absolutely. I've written about this a lot, and one of the things I've questioned is, has mental health education made our kids sick?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, you know, the whole idea as a psychologist that we want to educate people about mental health in order to reduce the stigma to come forward to get treatment is wonderful. But it's somewhere along the line we've crossed over from, you know, destigmatising seeking treatment to actually destigmatising the illness itself. And do we want to live in a world where being depressed or having anxiety is normal? I don't want to be in that world.
We lionise people for talking about that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, on one level, your status, proclaiming some sort of emotional pain gives you status. But look, my big criticism of this is kids are getting a very limited medicalised language to talk about their experience. And mental health has become this synonym just for ordinary life. But that's a very limited, narrow way to view the human experience.
Whereas in old days, we might have been taught that life is tough and you've got to be resilient.
And there'd be a much wider language to describe the experience.
Yeah. All right, great stuff. Thanks both for joining us again, Clare, Rowe and Tanveer Ahmed.